So what I'd like to do is, I'd like to continue today the discussion about the Gimel Perek Yud. And then next week, I'd like to move to Perek Yud Aleph. And Perek Yud Aleph, I expect that we'll read Perek Yud Aleph inside much more closely, like we've done in the previous series. But for now, we're going to talk about Perek Yud, assuming you know it. So let's see. What we spoke about last week is that, related to the idea in Perek Yud, that all evil is essentially privation. Okay, that's the technical word you'll find, or a lack. This is very important to the Rambam. This is how he starts his whole teachings about evil. The rois are a header. All rois are relative. It's only lacking something that makes it ra. So what the Rambam is doing over here, as we discussed at length, is the Rambam is associating toiv with existence. That which exists is toiv, as he says in Chel Gimel Perek Hey Hametzias Toivo B'li Sofik, and ra then is simply that which is not nimtza. Okay. The true meaning of the word ra, or those things that we judge to be ra, which is what the meaning of ra is, according to what we discussed. I think I'm going with that idea that toiv and ra is a judgment, like we see in Chiluk Alf Perek Beis. It's about shoftim. The snake said to Adam, "V'yisem kilehim," which Rambam says means like rav revaya, like shoftim. So being able to judge, and those things that we judge ra are be'etzem those things that are lacks of mitzias. When we confront a lack, Rambam explains death is a lack, health is a lack, illness is a lack, etc. So we judge that as being ra. Okay, and I wanted to just point out to another place where the Rambam indicates this association between what's toiv and what's matzui, and that's a Chiluk Beis Perek Lamed, where the Rambam talks about how come the Torah doesn't say ki toiv on the second day of creation. Yeah, which, as we discussed last week, that's the whole question of understanding the nature of ra is really understanding Bereshis Perek Aleph, very fundamental idea that the whole Torah is based on. The Rambam says, I think it was in Gimel Chafei, Torah starts ve'alakim es kol ha'shas v'nei toiv ma'od, and it ends at tzur tam pa'aloi kichol derech of mishpat. So the side of the Torah is that existence is a certain stance on existence. This is the most fundamental principle of the Torah. The Rambam himself says that. I say Rambam himself because I typically think of the Rambam as considering, let's say, fundamental Yugli Malikim. We look at the Yugli Malikim, it doesn't say anything about the universe being toiv. It's all about absolute facts about God and what God does. Nonetheless, the Rambam says in Gimel Chafei something which is more biblical sounding, which is that, the Torah really wants us to think that the world is good. That's what the Torah really cares about. Okay, so that's parenthetical. So this is what we're discussing here. We're discussing this fundamental premise of the whole religion, which is that the world is good. How do we square that with problems, challenges to that stance? Yeah. So Rambam Chiluk Beis Perek Lamed, this is in paragraph number 12. So he's talking about why it doesn't say ki toiv on the second day, and I'm reading from the top of page 192, the end of paragraph, section 12. He says it can't say ki toiv because the meaning of rakia is obscure. V'harei ein mashmos ki toiv ela sheyesh lo to'eles geluya ubrura b'kiyuma shel hametzias hazu v'hi mashchusa. Okay, so here the Rambam, another place where he really tells us what ki toiv means. You know what ki toiv means? Something that has a te'eles geluya ubrura b'kiyuma shel hametzias hazu v'hi mashchusa. Kitayv means something that A, contributes to the existence of and the continued existence of reality. But not only that, it has to be Gluya Ubrura, which tells me that, number one, we have this identity between Toiv and reality, that what's associated with reality, what contributes to reality's continuation is Toiv, but it's only Toiv because it's manifestly contributing to reality. Okay? So, something clearly contributes to reality. What the Rambam's point of is that the meaning of the Rakia is obscure, and therefore the Torah won't say Kitayv about it. It's some obscure concept. It's not called Toiv.
You don't think it's referring back to this idea of the judgment?
So,
if it's Galui and borrowed, then...
Right, so if the Rambam would say, because the pasuk is Vayar lekim Kitayv, then I would accept your reading. But he says that the meaning of Kitayv is that. So, maybe it's the key, although Kitayv, because Kitayv means there's some indication of being Tayv. That could be. So it's
not Goli,
so there's no key. Like what's there's nothing that indicates it. Maybe we could believe that it's Tayv, but we can't see that it is. Okay, fine.
To the observer, to the judger specifically.
So that's what I want to read it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In other words, basically what he's saying is like, let's say in reality there's some very obscure things, okay, concepts, whatever. So the Torah is not going to say that those are Taiv because it's a meaningless thing to say it's Taiv. Right, but remember it says in Gimel that the whole statement of Yal Kim Ki Taiv is actually the B'Torah Koloshim B'nei Adam. Okay, that's very important. That's in Gimel Yud Gimel paragraph number 17. Where the Rambam says that, let's look at that again. The Gimel paragraph 17. It's on top of page 97 in the Mifal Mishatera edition. Zui mashmoz dvar v'yad lekim ki toiv. Ki yadu alecha mashi be'anu b'neged d'vrayim d'b'tor koloshim b'nei Adam. V'atoiv etzleinu hu bitoy ha'misyaches l'mashamat im l'kavonoseinu. Torah speaks the language of man. Remember from Chedek Aleph, Perek Ovov. So what does it mean that Torah speaks the language of man? It means the Torah says things about Hashem as if he's a human. This is an Aleph Chavav, paragraph number 1. Whatever people can understand at first glance, that's what Torah attributes to God. So the Torah does not talk about Hashem in a very abstract and abstruse ways that only great philosophers will understand. The Torah talks about Hashem the way people think Machshava Rishayna. So that's why Torah talks about Hashem in corporeal terms. You want to talk about Hashem existing, you have to talk about Him moving, you have to talk about Him speaking and coming and going. Why? Right at the beginning of the parak. The Hamoin is only masik at first Iyun, the Metzias of a guf. The Hamoin does not, you tell a Hamoin something which is not corporeal, is not a body, and it still has strong existence, that's something that the Hamoin can't be typhus. Okay? By the way, whether it's still true about today's Hamoin is, to me, is very questionable. I think it's a very important question to explore one day. Are there still a Hamoin? Yeah, because like the Rambam describes Hamoini over here as someone who has a hard time fathoming that something exists that's not physical, not corporeal. I don't know if that's true anymore. Meaning, the reason why it might have changed, the reason why it would have changed, I'm observing is that most people understand that these days. I'm taking that as an observation. The cause for that would be the advances in technology and science, which basically made people think a little bit more abstractly about everything, because we've realized that everything is a lot more abstract than we thought. I think that the Hamayin also changed there. Anyway, but the point is like this. So the Hamayin says the Rambam, this is an important idea in the Moed Vuchim, cannot fathom existence except for something which is a body, and therefore the Torah talks about Hashem as if he's corporeal. And the Rambam, and the point is that it doesn't actually mean that. When the pasuk says V'yirad Hashem, the truth is that Hashem doesn't move. And the Torah talks about him as if he does to impress upon people the true concept of his existence. And here the Rambam is saying in Gimel Yud Gimel, he's saying that when the Torah says V'yal Kim Kitoiv, that's the Torah speaking human language. Meaning to say what? So let's see what that means. And he says, because Toiv means what we consider to be achieve our desire, our wishes, our intent. And here the Torah is using the same term about God, but really it doesn't apply to God. Really only applies to humans, like Yarad, Shachan, Allah, Yatza, Ba. Can you make it colder? Put it down one. Yeah, shkoyach. So the Ram tells us that Toiv, like Yarad, is a term that you really have to be a human to use that term. Okay? So to recap what we discussed last week, I want to continue on this theme. Metzias is Toiv b'li safek. Why is Metzias Toiv b'li safek? Because who's judging that? The Mitzuyim. Us. Who ourselves are Motzi. So we are in a sense reflected in reality. What I mean to say is, like the Rambam says in Chelik Aleph, Parak Ayin Aleph, that all of Metzias is one. Very important idea. The whole all of reality is one entity. Chelik Aleph, Parak Ayin Beis. All of reality is one entity. And he says it's like one organism, like Reuven is a person, is an entity, Shimon is an entity. All of Metzias is an entity. So when we're judging Metzias to be Toiv, we're judging ourselves to be Toiv. We can't help but judge ourselves to be Toiv, as I discussed last week, the mechanics of it. We can't help but approve. What about Hashem? Does Hashem have the same approval, the Toiv approval that we do? So the Rambam is saying, Gimel Gimel, that really he doesn't.
Of our Metzias?
Yeah, V'yal Kim Kitoiv is about our Metzias. And the Rambam is saying that that's not technically true, V'yal Kim Kitoiv. That's only true if we treat Hashem as a human. Why? Okay.
That's assuming he plays with the same rules.
Right, so it's because he doesn't play with the same rules. That's
If we assume we're pre-fake, it's a checker, you're not
okay.
So everyone has obviously
Yeah, but it says Yalakim K'toiv Prichet. That's the thing.
Based on human conception.
Right, so what is that? And what does God have? Why does God not have that? Why can't he judge something to be Toiv? Why can't he judge something to be Toiv? Why can't he approve? Why can't he approve? Why can't he approve?
Even if he could hypothetically, would he be bound by the same purpose contingent understanding of Torah?
Okay,
What
fine.
Rambam was saying? Because if he is, then it's totally Akash Baruch Hu couldn't do something inconsistent with his original intent or purpose.
All right, and therefore what? Oh, so what's it adding? So you're getting back to that
Yeah.
question? What's it adding? What's it saying? Okay. Okay, let's get to this question soon. I want to talk about now something, so we're going to get back to this. What exactly about V'yalakim Kitoiv makes it fundamentally human? Okay, it's very important. I'm saying this whole business of Toiv is a fundamentally human thing, and once we talk about Hashem, we have to shift. In truth, we have to shift the way we think, and we can't think about this V'yalakim Kitoiv. Every time we think about V'yalakim Kitoiv, when you think about Hashem looking down at the world and seeing that it's Toiv, you're thinking about it in human terms. Okay, and that's not because of Vayar. Obviously, we know already Vayar doesn't mean Riyah. It means Hasaga. That's Chelik Aleph Parak. That's not the point of it. There's something unique about Kitoiv. So we'll get to that soon. I want to focus now on a passage here in Chelik Gimel Parak Yud, the parak that we're focusing on, that we sort of skimmed over last time, but it's something very strange. I'm not sure if you noticed it. The Rambam says all evil is a header. And he talks about the pasuk in Yeshaya that says Yotzer Oyer Uvay Choshech Ches Shalom B'Yira. This is in paragraph number 3. Ki HaChoshech v'Hara Hederim. Darkness and evil are both privations, both lacks. Choshech is a lack of Or, and Ra is a lack of Metzias. His Beinah Ketzel Lema Oiseh Choshech Lema Oiseh Ra. It doesn't say the word Oiseh on Choshech or Ra. Why? Ki Einim Dvar Metzuyim. Kach T'shlei Asiyah Kshur Mem. Asiyah would mean something that exists and was made in its form that it has. Ela Ishtamish L'Gabein B'Loshen Bara. Why? Ki L'Mila Zu Yesh Kesher L'Heder Be'ivris K'mash Omer Breish B'Elakim. The word Bara has something to do with Heder. Because Breish B'Elakim is Eis Heder. Breish B'Elakim is Yesh Me'ayin. So you see that Bara has an association with Heder. So to Bara means that he created a Heder. So Rambam is doing this weird move. He's saying that just like Bereshit Bara means from Heder, so to any creation of a Heder. How did Hashem create Heder? He explains, because by making us susceptible to Hederim, that's considered an indirect creation of Heder. That's the whole point of the parak. But the reason why it's called Bara is because Bara is a word that is associated with Heder. But the association goes in reverse, because Bara, Bereshit Bara Lakim, is from Heder. And Brias Ara is a creation of Heder. So I think what the Rambam is saying is like this. When did Ra come into existence? Or when did the Heder come into existence? Well, let's ask the question like this. Is the Heder before Bereshit Bara Lakim, when nothing existed? Is that Ra, like the Heder, after Bereshit Bara Lakim? The Ra, the Heder of after Bereshit Bara Lakim means God created X amount and no more. He made people live till 120. That's it. He made the Chayim have such and such abilities, and not more. That's how much. That's a quantitative thing. There's Metzias. There's a certain amount of Metzias. Let's think. I mean, obviously, you could look at it qualitatively also, but I think quantitatively gets to the Rambam's point. It's like, here's how much he did, and more than this he didn't do. Okay, so what he didn't do is now is the same, let's say, as Kodim Bereshit Bara Lakim. Right? There was nothing, and now there's not everything, but there's something, and the rest is still nothing. But the quality of the nothing after Bria is fundamentally different than the quality before, because before Bria, there was nothing to compare it to. And as the Rambam says in Chelik and Perek Yud, Ra is a Heder b'yachas to something. Death is a Heder b'yachas to life. There's no judgment of Ra and Tov is a judgment. There's no judgment without the alternative. So, Vayal Kim Ki Tov, with creation, but prior to creation, you didn't see Ra. There was no Ra prior to creation. With the creation from Heder, God created Ra. So, Boirei Ra is equivalent with Bereshit Bara Lakim as Hashem Emes, because since creation was from Heder and didn't completely banish the Heder, because God didn't create everything, He didn't maximize existence to 100%, He only made it 90% or whatever, 60, 55%, we'll see. I was very concerned with percentages, by the way. I was very concerned to say that there's more Tov than Ra. People think there's more evil than good, and they make songs about it. Big mistake. He makes a cheshbon, comes out there's more Tov than Ra. It's important to the Rambam. Very, very interesting. So good, but whatever he didn't do, since it was Meheder, the Heder that remains now turns into Ra. So Boirei Ra is identical to the Bereshit Bara Lakim. Okay?
I'm confused. I think you just explained how they're not identical.
No. It's identical with Bereshit Bara Lakim. Because since Bereshit Bara Lakim, which means God made the world from Heder, therefore any Heder that remains becomes Ra. And with Bereshit Bara Lakim, therefore there's Boirei Ra. Since he was Bara from Heder, so now our starting point is Heder. That Heder is not Ra till he makes Yesh. Right. But once he makes some Bria, whatever remains that he didn't do becomes Ra. Because that's the definition of Ra. Whatever he didn't do. So I'm just saying simply, I'm saying Bereshit Bara means he created from nothing. And by virtue of the fact that the creation was from nothing, he was Bayre Ra. So Rambam's not making Gzeh Shav a header. He's saying it's the same header from which he was Bayre that now becomes Ra. Okay? Which means like this, and I'll say this, I don't want to go too much into this. Now, by the way, so that means there's a fair question to say, okay, well, why did God only create the amount that he did? Right? What's this whole business? The Rambam is saying, okay, whatever's evil is only a header. It only brings us back to the ayin. Yeah, we're making claims on God. We're trying to make a claim on God. Because we're supposed to make claims on God. We have to understand God. We think there's some fairness here, right? And what's Rambam's solution to the fairness in Chilik Gimel Perek Yud? It's all fair, because whatever he did is good. Whatever he didn't do, he didn't do. Whatever he didn't do, he didn't do.
So inherent to Chemer,
What?
that there's going to be heaven.
Yeah.
So it's not God.
So now you get to the question. Now this gets to the very important question in the Moira, which is, how much is God limited? How do we judge what's possible when it conflicts with nature or reality? Very, very perplexing problem that the Rambam himself in Chilik Gimel Perek Vav talks about, and other places. He doesn't know how he's supposed to approach that question. Mi yitain v'yadati, he says, how are you supposed to know what's possible and what's not possible? But to say that, listen, this is what it means to be chaymer, Rambam does say that. Might not be a sufficient answer, because you might question, yes, this is what it means to be chaymer, given nature as we know it. What if I'm a science fiction writer and I can conjure up a different kind of chaymer that that doesn't have these qualities, okay?
So,
It becomes a major problem. This is a major tension in the Moira. Are we starting with reality as it is? And Rambam does that in some places.
even without that, within the Chemer that God created, the Chemer itself is called Ku'etay.
Yeah.
So when are you pointing at God and saying, you could have made a better Chemer?
Yeah.
The Chemer is tight, so what's your problem?
So now, no, because my question on Chilik Gimel Perek Yud is that sort of the Rambam made it quantitative. He said everything that exists is good, and whatever's bad, it just doesn't exist. What does that solve for me? I could ask, why didn't God do more? Right.
What's wrong with God, what God created?
So I think, tell me if you agree with this, I would frame it as the only way to really ask that question is to say, why did God do what he did? We have to have an idea of what he was up to.
No, but even without that, what's your problem with the Chemer itself that God created is perfect.
Right?
So
As Chomer.
yeah,
As Chomer.
But that's what God created.
Right. But why did he do that? Why didn't he do something better?
What's wrong with what he did?
Because if we're able to understand why, see, this is the thing. Are we able to understand why he did what he did? If God did what he did. If yes, then we have a way to answer your question, what's wrong with what he did, by saying, well, is it the best that he could have done given his purpose? You see, that's why I think purpose is very important. Because when we talk about when you do something, let's say you do something, and like, okay, I say you could have done more, whatever. What do I mean to say? Well, because I have an idea of what you're trying to do. You give him tzedakah. I say you should give him more tzedakah. You're like, well, you mean I gave tzedakah, it's a good thing. Yeah, but why is it a good thing? Because the guy's hungry and you should alleviate his hunger. Well, then, according to the argument, you should have done more. That's a fair thing, right? Why? Because I have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. So if we have an idea of what God is trying to accomplish, then we could ask this question. Then I could give him eitzis. But if we're taking his existence as being the end-all of what he's trying to accomplish without giving it a prior other reason, then you'd be right.
Now you're moving on to a much deeper question. What was God's purpose?
Yes, I think we have to.
We solved the problem of how could there be rock. You have to agree with that. We solved that issue. There is no rock.
So again,
you want to know why God couldn't have done his job
yes,
better?
yes. No, and I also maintain much more fundamentally that if we could define his mitzias, his purpose, then that actually is the question we're asking. The whole business. When I ask you why don't you give more tzedakah, you can't. It's completely irrelevant to say, well, whatever I gave is good, because it's just so irrelevant. Why is it irrelevant? Because I understand what you're doing, or I think I understand what you're doing, and therefore I think you should have given more. So if I understand what God is doing, then to say, well, look, he did what he did, doesn't make sense. The only reason we're treating God differently, and we're saying whatever he did is good, and whatever is ra is just that he didn't do, is because we're taking his actions as the metric by which to judge everything, because we don't have another measure of what he's out to do. Okay, and this, let me just finish the thought, and then you tell me if you do agree. This brings us to Chelik Gimel Perek Gimel, where the Rambam talks about is there tachlis for the world, and he says you can't ask that question. Now, you can ask a or you can't answer that question. You can't ask that question. Which there's no point. There's no tachlis. Tachlis means doing something for a reason, as in needing something, requiring something, and God requires nothing. So, good. Say that. Now, I don't mean to say that since we can't answer that question or ask that question, therefore we could start at step B, because I think, going back to what I said before, if there is an answer to that question, then that's the only question that's worth thinking about. And the whole other business of taking reality as it is, as our metric, and working with that is a joke. The reason why the Ram takes reality as it is and works with it and says, okay, reality is good and whatever is right is non-reality, is only because it's not merely this. You have to know Chelik Gimel Perek Gimel. It's not merely that we don't have an answer to that question. It's a fundamentally flawed question, and really, reality is ultimately the final measure of possible being in a certain sense and purposeful being. Okay, this is very abstract and it takes a Chelik Gimel Perek Gimel.
Isn't your point also necessary though? If the original inquiry, again, reminding how we started it, is to solve the problem of theodicy.
Right.
So all we've done is reframe that bad is not really bad. Okay, then why does non-existence exist as part of existence? What's the plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
That's why I hear where you're coming from. Like, we still
Yeah.
need to answer the ultimate purpose question, because all we've done is change definitions. It's no more we're good to go.
Right.
We still see what we're calling non-existence in the world.
Right.
I could agree with that, but I think that it's important to point that out, that we've solved the problem with Ra. We solved that problem. Now we have a different question. Not a theodicy.
No, we've just redefined Ra. We haven't said why it exists or why it doesn't exist.
Exactly. I mean, the Rambam in the Perek Good, he didn't say a word about, okay, now I know why it exists. He just said, you should know it's not Matzah.
Let me be more clear. To me, the initial problem was we accept that God is good, yet we see evil.
Fine, that's a fair way to ask it. Right.
I see the Rambam as answering that question.
Yes.
And now we're left with a separate question.
Right.
Which is not a stira as much as of a why.
Right, but why? But look, let's say you go Ramchal, Nechek HaTov L'Hetiv, then if that's how we start our understanding of creation, then we have to ask, is this the maximum Hatava possible? And if not, that's a kasha on Nechek HaTov L'Hetiv. Right, but I'm saying the Rambam, right, but the Rambam, I'm saying is that the Rambam's, the way the Rambam's approaching it is forcing us to say that reality is fundamentally the place where we're supposed to look for the answer, and not in some a priori idea of what God is trying to do. Okay? At least to some extent, yeah. Good. So I just wanted to end this thought and say like this. So it means the Rambam is saying here in this point of Bara, saying a very fascinating thing. God created the world from Heder. Okay. But the Heder is not completely banished. Every time there's something wrong, every time you have a pain, or someone dies, or illness, or whatever, poverty. So the Rambam is telling us is that you're essentially coming face to face with the ayin. There's still some ayin. Okay? Yeah? And so this is extremely important, because the whole business that there's creation after no creation, as we discussed in last series, points to the fact that there's something inherently absurd, inexplicable about the world. Contra Aristotle. Aristotle stands for explanation. That's a central shita. That man's ability to explain is complete, at least in theory. Everything in the world is explainable, which is to say, what does that mean? That means that chokhmah, man's power of explanation, is the most fundamental reality, and everything matches reason, whether we can fully explore it or not, and whether it will take us a long time to get there, fine. But ultimately, reason is the most, the truest thing. Now, yesh me'ayin is unreasonable. Because if the world should have existed, if the world should exist, which Aristotle believes wholeheartedly that it should, and he's maskim, in other words, the world matches Chokhmah, then it should have always existed. Okay? And what the Rambam says, I'm not going to go into this much, I'll say briefly, those who are familiar with this will know, that that's true, that according to Chokhmah, meaning if you follow reason, then existence after non-existence is absurd. Because existence is reasonable, then it's always reasonable. So the fact that the world is born into existence after non-existence points to something further, beyond Chokhmah. Call it Hashem's Ratzin, or call it Hashem's inscrutable Chokhmah. The Rambam always has these two studim. But there's something beyond human Chokhmah, at least. Human Chokhmah cannot explain everything. And that's, as the Rambam in Chilik Beis Perek Chav Ches, is induces yira. Induces yira. So the fact that there are things that are inexplicable, such as the world is inexplicable from the perspective of Heder, because if it once didn't exist, why does it have to exist? That induces yira. And what the Rambam is telling us over here, essentially, is that the existence of Ra also leads to yira. Because let's say, imagine a world where there's no Ra. Imagine a world where Hashem created maximum existence, okay? Let's say imagine that, right? And imagine it's possible. In that world, the world would have always existed also. Because it's the same, that's Rambam is making this equation between Bria from Heder and the fact that there's Ra. Because if a God wants to maximize Metzias means no Heder, no illness, no death, no poverty, and also no time where there's no Metzias. So then, basically, Aristotle will be right. So in other words, from the perspective of Aristotle, the world does not have anything inexplicable. So similarly, there's no justification for any heder, meaning absolute heder, yesh me'ayin, because that's also inexplicable, given that the world should exist. But from our perspective, that we say, yes, you know what, the world is inexplicable, and that induces yira. So similarly, the same heder that we face whenever we face Ra also induces yira. Okay? That's it. In other words, the fact that everything's not perfect is identical with the fact that things are. What that means is that things are not complete from our perspective. So that should bring to yira. I think it should bring to yira. So basically, there's an idea over here that facing evils is facing the fact that maybe nothing has to exist. And even though it seems like everything should, by the argument that things should exist, which seems very reasonable to us, then the world should have always existed. And also there should be no heder, if it's possible, or it should be possible, whatever, getting into that whole question. The fact that we face that heder means that our chokhmah is incomplete. And that induces yira. The alternative is to take that, let's say what Aristotle does. Aristotle doesn't have a problem with evils. According to what I'm saying now, Aristotle should have a problem with evils. He doesn't. But he doesn't have a problem with evils because he thinks they could be justified. He has to justify it. We who believe in Bereshis bara have a different attitude towards evil than Aristotle does, because since Rambam says evil is heder, so we're okay with heder. Heder is absurd. Yes, the world is absurd. Okay, which I think is extremely important. I think it's very important because basically what this means is then that when we see Ra, we don't have to believe in it at all. We could think it's wrong. It's as wrong as the world not existing is wrong from our perspective. Now, from our perspective, we can only think. We can only do chachma. From our perspective, the world not existing for an infinity, whatever, there was no time, you know what I mean, is inexplicable, i.e. wrong. And we're okay with that. Why? Because we live with this tension called there's a way we think, and then there's also the knowledge that the way we think is not complete, and that's called yira. So yira is an antidote to evil. Because instead of saying, look, I accept that people die, or I accept that there's poverty and I'm okay with that, we're not okay with it. It exists, okay. Must be there's something beyond what I could fathom, and maybe something beyond what I could ever fathom. Okay, I want to point that that's what comes out from this.
You get existence evil. It's not.
Yeah, exists as Heather. Whatever. It doesn't exist. It's
It
non-existent.
doesn't say there's some reason that we can't understand. No, it's actually inexplicable.
Yeah, which is the definition of evil. Yeah, because it's completely evil means, from our perspective, right? Evil means something that we judge as being wrong, and this is something that we judge as being wrong and should judge as being wrong. That's the point. While Aristotle would say that's an oxymoron. You can't be anything that humans judge to be wrong, which is how he knows that the world always existed. Because from human judgment, the world should have always existed, if it exists now. We maintain that there's something beyond human judgment, beyond, forever beyond. And that's why I think we spoke about this last series. The Rambam's not a huge fan of Yira. You have to have Yira in small doses, which is why Nisim have to occur in very small doses, because Ba'atzim, what they do is they undermine Chachma. They undermine human Chachma, which is all we've got. And not just all we've got, it is fundamental. Even the Rambam's moed to Aristotle halfway, which is actually borrowing a term that the Rambam Zav uses, an important term that he uses when he says that even though he believes that the world was Yesh Mi'ayin, it was Kodem, but it will exist forever. He's moed to Aristotle b'mechza. That's a fundamental thing there, which we'll probably get to in this series. The moed b'mechza to Aristotle means that, yes, Chachma, as in things are the way they should be, is a fundamental feature of reality. Rambam is not denying, like the Mutakalamin say, no, everything is from God, nothing makes sense, there's no cause and effect, there's no science, it's a very firm approach. But the Rambam doesn't believe in that, because he does believe that God made a world that's Chachma, Mikan Lahabel Pachas, into the future.
Too much here, that's why he downplays how much Ra there actually is.
Oh, it's very interesting. That's fascinating. I didn't think of that. That's a great thought.
The same way he doesn't like Nisim, he doesn't like the.
That's great. That's really interesting. So Ra is rear. At least it's right. It's fascinating. I didn't think of that. Okay, we'll get to that. That's a great question. So let's see what we're going to do is like this. So we're doing here Perek Yud. Perek Yud Aleph is a fascinating parak. We're going to do that next week. That's about two things. It's about how all evils are caused by ignorance. That's a very important. That has to do with their crazier question. Because the Rambam in Perek Yud Aleph says if everyone would have Das Hashem, everything would be fine. That means as long as you know the truth, you're good. And that's a big question. People could know something and do otherwise. Okay, and then Perek Yud Beis is about this business of Raiv. Perek Yud Beis is that it's not true that most things are evil, most things are good. So maybe we'll get to that one also. Okay. So let's go back to the question of Chelik Gimel, Perek Yud Gimel. The Rambam says that Ve'alakim ki tov is dibur Torah k'lashon b'nei Adam. So that means the whole Tov construct is what? Is something that we judge as good. But God doesn't do that, okay? So then why doesn't God do that, right? Why doesn't God do that? Same way we look at something and approve, why can God approve of something? So I maintain like this. This is a continuation of what we've been discussing, that Tov is identical with Metzias. Tov is identical with Metzias because we are part of the Metzias. And as I mentioned, that really all Metzias is one entity. So when I look around the Metzias and I judge as Tov, that's just the Metzias judging itself as being Tov, which it cannot help to do, as we discussed. Okay, now, that does not apply to God. You know why that doesn't apply to God? Because God is not Motzui. Chelik Aleph Perek Nun Vov, paragraph number 4. Shehu Yis'ale v'chol ma shezulasai mechunim Motzui b'shit of Greda. Tavi, could you pass the volume 1 of the Pinnis translation? I want to see English. No volume. Yeah, thank you. Just don't touch the cord. Touch the cord. Thank you. So God and everything else exist only b'shit of Hashem. Shit of Hashem means one word that means two different things, completely two different things. Such as the classic example the Rambam gives in his treatise on logic is the word ayin, which means an eye and a spring. Spring, mayan, no shaykhis. Okay, well, there's a shaykhis because the spring has tears come out and the eyes come, and it looks like an eye inside a mountainside, but But Lamaisa, whatever, that's important. That means Alpidimian there's an association. There's no association in reality between the two. And God and everything else, we talk about God as being motzui. But we use the term existent, that he is an existent, is predicated of him, may be exalted, and of everything that is other than he, in a purely equivocal sense. Purely equivocal sense means we use a word in two absolutely different ways. Now, why do we talk about God as existing then? Because it's important to know, as Rambam says, Barichos, that he doesn't not exist. In other words, we can fathom two things. We're familiar with existence, that's, you know what that is. And we could also fathom non-existence. God doesn't fit into any of those two categories. But it's much more important to know that he doesn't fit into the category of non-existence than that he doesn't fit into the category of existence. That's very advanced. You'll only know that if you learn Maravuchu. You won't know that if you learn all the other writings of the Rambam. Okay? So now, God is not part of this business of looking at something and approving. And I think about it like this. Imagine there was something that you and it had no yachas at all. Something qualitatively of a different kind of a being. Yeah, like let's say, maybe a good example of this. Let's say you believe in the multiverse. Okay, now you hold of the multiverse, and that you hold that there's never any interaction between one universe and the other. Okay, so this is the best mashal I can think of. I think it's the best mashal. Would you have any opinion about the other universe? It's no shaykhis. It's a different plane of existence. Fundamentally a different plane of existence. And this is a bad mashal because Hashem's existence and ours are not even that. Because at least in the case of a multiverse, our universe and other universe are be'etzem have the same qualities, more or less, whatever, or share some qualities. But Hashem and everything else has no shaykhis elazeh. They're not part of the same system in any way. So then God judging and saying, this is toiv, that doesn't make any sense. Because you only judge as toiv that which has something to do with you.
Why don't we have something to do with God
Can you get some water, please?
The mamtzi of the inside. He
Right.
creates us. We
Right.
are his creation. So
Right.
could be we're not be'erech,
Right.
but
Right, so where the yachas, right, so there's a
we have some
yachas,
shaykhis for some kind of judgment.
right, that's called the yachas of activity, that he's the cause of us. But there's no yachas in terms of our being and his being. They're not part of the same category. When you're judging something as being toiv, you're fundamentally approving of yourself. That's what we've been getting at. Because your mitzias and the other mitzias have some sort of symbiosis.
If you set out to bake chocolate chip cookies, and you bake the cookies,
Right.
and they're good, and they comport with your original purpose. So
Right.
It says you deem that toiv.
Right.
Why
You know why you deem that toiv is because the original purpose says something about you, about what you want, about what you need.
You're saying the rutzen behind it all is different, so maybe
Right.
the activity is different.
Right. Yes. In other words, the rutzen when we do something is because we have a lack. So we need a cookie. So when I say it's toiv, what I'm saying is that hunger pang, yeah, the cookie is going to alleviate the hunger pang. So therefore, me and it have a very important yachas. The most important yachas that we relate to everything with as human beings, and that's toiv or ra. And that's Chilik Alf Brek Beis. That this is what humans use as the most important guide through life. Why? Because they're part of the system, and therefore they have to figure out, well, is this friend or foe? Is this on my side? Is this something that I share mitzias with, or is it something that it's part of the header?
Why
The
is
God
this
shares nothing with nothing.
Why is this worse than any other diverse definition?
It's not. It's not. But I was making the point over here that the whole business of Hashem seeing the world as toiv is a anthropomorphism. Now, I think it is actually worse. In other words, I think there's a reason why the Ram pointed out here. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. There's a reason why the Ram pointed out here. We have to think about that. Okay, why is that the case? So let's think about this. So now, I mean, yeah, just again, the reason why I think it's so hard for us to think about this is because we're so used to thinking about Hashem Kalashim Teyanda. We have no problem with Ve'al Hashem Kitayv because we're thinking about Hashem as, yeah, He does care. What do you mean? He cares. But no, He doesn't care. Because why would He care? Caring means having some association. Specifically, typically, it fills a need. You care about those things that fill your needs. So we're very used to this, but the Rambam is reminding us is only a pedagogical tool Torah uses to make people think of the existence of Hashem. If you think into it deeply, there is no approval. Now, it does reflect some truth, right? Every Dibur Torah Adam is reflecting some truth, which we'll have to get to at some point. But I want to first focus on the Dibur Torah Adam aspect. The Torah talks about Hashem as if His Metzias, as if He is Motzui, in the same way we are Motzui. That's what Rambam says in the beginning of Chelik Al Perek Vav, that the Hamoin cannot be Masig Metzias not in Guf. So the Torah talks about Hashem as if He's part of that system of physical existence, things that exist. Okay? And this is, in a sense, the Aleph Beis of the Torah. The Rambam says in Aleph, Chelik Aleph Perek Aleph, the Rambam talks about what does it mean that man is B'Tselem Elokim. Man is B'Tselem Elokim is the greatest anthropomorphism. It's talking about God in human terms, but it's talking about humans in godly terms. And the Rambam's Meirich over there, okay, and this is getting to this will bring us into our next thing, which I guess we'll just start this discussion tonight, and we'll continue next week. The Rambam ends Chelik Aleph Perek Aleph with explaining what Kidmuseinu means. And he says there's a similarity, there's a damios, there's a similarity man and God, which is that man has intellect, and intellect doesn't use senses or limbs, okay, or tools. But the Rambam over there says, very important line over there. This is in paragraph number 8. He says, Dima oisel hasogas aloika she'en erdei amtzoi, af she'en zu doimos be'emes, ela b'mapet rishon b'levad. Even to say that man is b'dmus Hashem, which Rambam goes to pains to say does not mean that man is God, but rather man is like God, the similarity, it's not even truly a similarity. What does that mean? That means, as Rambam explains in the Prakim on Ta'arim, you can't compare just anything you want. And you can't just make similes out of anything. To say something is similar to something else, there's certain rules that have to be met, such as they have to belong to the same category that you could compare within that category. So the similarity, as we discussed, God is completely of a different of its own kind. So even the similarity, Kidmuseinu, Zok the Rambam, is only l'chayra. I think Kapach has, Schwartz has l'chayra, right? Underlined. Why do I have l'chayra underlined an exclamation point, right? I think, whatever. Okay, why? Because you know what the Rambam does in all the beginning prakim? The Rambam always shows us how a word has two meanings. Okay, Allah means to ascend physically. Allah also means to ascend conceptually. And when it talks about God being Allah, the deeper meaning, not the Dibur Torah Hashem Adam, the deeper meaning is He ascended conceptually. Here the Rambam does his move, which he never does anywhere else, and he says that, I'll tell you what Kidmuseinu means, to justify this anthropomorphism, but I'm just going to tell you, even that is not really true. It's only Be'erech Kidmuseinu. So what do you mean Be'erech Kidmuseinu? Kidmuseinu means God is like man. What do you mean it's not really true? Torah says it. He's saying it's only Hashkafa Rishayna. The Rambam is saying over here is that the first fundamental move that the Torah does, which is taka not justified in truth, is to be Madama God to man. That's the one thing that the Torah does. From that, everything else follows. But that first move, which is what the Rambam is saying in Dibur Torah Lashmid Adam, there's something that can't be justified philosophically. I'm saying it like as if it's a terrible thing. I don't mean it that way. I mean to say that even though the Rambam holds that the Torah doesn't say things l'chayra or b'mabet rishon, bilvad, Torah says things accurately. That's once we make that mahalach of approaching Hashem in a certain way, with human terms, because otherwise Hashem is not even nimtza and there's nothing to talk about. Within that, now the Torah uses words b'diuk. But the first move that the Torah treats of Hashem as a human, in some ways, that's a conscious, deliberate move that is really not true in any meaning, only true, proximally true. Okay, so now.
But doesn't he spend a good hunk of Gemara trying to figure out those different Torahs though?
Yeah.
So it works on some level.
Right. So we're asking, once we say Kidmusenu is l'chayra, why can't everything else just be l'chayra?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm saying it's like this. I'm saying is that there's one l'chayra that underlies everything, and that is, let's blur the line between two kinds of existence. Blur it. We're not going to treat him as being a human being, but we'll blur the line sufficiently. Then now we can use all these other terms in a oifen meduyak.
Okay, but you're still left with the fundamental question here on the type of how.
Yeah, wait. We'll get back to that, to the type. No, but the point is the fundamental move that Torah does is let's think of God as not being categorically different than humans.
Right.
And then once we do that, we can approach him and say all these things from that perspective.
How could a way of saying without? You knew it wasn't the same. It never claimed to be the same. It was always playing.
Right. Okay.
It was always playing at a different.
Right. So, but nonetheless, okay. So I mean, I know the answer. I do not know the answer to this question. Let's state the facts over here. Right. The Rambam in Chelik Aleph Perek Aleph is saying a dibur Torah kalash from the Adam, and he's saying, unlike every other term, which the Rambam always says two things: dibur Torah kalash from the Adam, and therefore the Torah says yarad Allah shachan yatsa ba afar whatever. But also those words have a truer meaning, an absolutely, completely true meaning, and the Rambam shows that those words have a second meaning. That's the Rambam's move in Chelik Aleph through Perek Mem Ches V'Tes. Here, when it comes to the first move that the Torah says, God's like man, just take that doesn't have a true meaning. Okay? The Nusenu has no true meaning. Now, why is that okay? That's a question I don't know the answer for. But
why is that okay? Meaning, does he know?
No. If the Torah is only writing things that have, besides for Dibur Torah Kalash Min Adam, also have a true meaning, why is the move itself of saying, let's be Dibur Kalash Min Adam, let's say God is in the same category as man, why is that okay?
Is this the only instance where the Rambam says this is the case?
Yeah. It's the only case where he says, okay, the word means something, but it's not really. Doesn't work. The rest of the word doesn't work. In other words, you sort of learn the Myra and you keep on wondering why the Rambam doesn't do this. Okay, so God's not really Yarad B'Seder, fine, okay, we know that already. But no, he's going to show that Yarad has another meaning. The Rambam wants that when you read every pasuk, and by the way, if you do this in davening, it's murdik. If you actually start translate the terms of a psukim or of davening into the non-anthropomorphical meanings, it gets a great depth and a great abstraction. That's how the Rambam wants you to learn Torah, and that's how the Rambam wants you to daven. If he wants the words, if you're a simple guy, you read Vayed Hashem ala Sinai to mean X, Y, Z. If you're really pushed the guy, you'll think Hashem came down in his body. If you're a little bit more edel, you'll know it means the light, the Shechina. But the best, most abstract meaning is to say Vayed Hashem ala Sinai means Hashem. It was below Hashem's loftiness to communicate with man. That's the Rambam wants you to read that pasuk. Vayed Hashem ala Sinai means the fact that information came from God to Moses is something that's inconsistent with our conception of God's transcendence. That is literally how the Rambam wants you to read the pasuk. And he thinks Torah writes that way, that there's all these levels of meaning. But when it comes to Daima, there's just this move, okay? Now, taking us back to Vayarlakim Kitayv, I think that's following from this B'Nusenu, that Vayarlakim Kitayv is a Lashon B'nei Adam. And really, we judge things as Tayv because we're part of them. The Torah, talking about Hashem as caring for what we care about, is part of this. It follows from this move of putting Hashem into the same category as humans, because the whole business of judging Tayv requires a categorical association. Me and the thing that I judge have to, at the minimum, be under the same category, and by saying Hashem is Daima to humans, we put him in that category, and therefore we say that he sees the world as Tayv. Okay, so you know what we're going to do? Let's leave this now. Let's leave this for now. Let me just see. Okay, let me just put forth some things that I want to talk about next week, and we'll get a sense of where we need to go. We spoke about Vayara Lekim Kitov, the Re'iyah, as being a very important part of the question, because Tov follows from a Re'iyah, Tov follows from a judgment. And now we're learning that Vayara Lekim Kitov, so God's judgment, that something is Tov, is really something that it doesn't make sense from God's perspective. Doesn't make sense from God's perspective. Okay, so let's see what we have to figure out. We have to figure out a few things. We have to figure out what truth does it reflect from God's perspective. Yeah, one question. Okay, what is it actually saying? What does it really mean? Not the words, but what is it alluding to? And then, and this is what I want to get to, two more related questions. Number one, can we be Raya Kitov in the true meaning? There's a true meaning of Vayara Lekim Kitov. And that apparently is not Keloshim Le'adam, right? Because it's something transcendent. So there's some sort of transcendent Raya Kitov, but that's, again, to be clear, the words Raya Kitov only make sense from humans. But it's referring to something. What is it referring to, in truth? Can human beings be masig that? Okay? And this is even more important to me, or whatever, it's a different aspect of it, the fact that we are Raya as humans, is there any validity to that? In other words, the fact that we look at the world and see that it's Taiv, and we do it as humans tend to do it, does that tell us something important about the world? Does the Torah care about that? No, you think it doesn't. But then there's a difference. So then there's two things. So there's a different Torah Keloshim Le'adam, right? So I don't know. Maybe the Torah does care about the fact that we look. At least it's using that. Okay. So what? In other words, what is that move over there that Torah is using Bnei Adam's Re'iyah as a mashal for Hashem's? Okay. You could say we have nothing else to use. That's fine, and there's no more significance than that. Fine. I don't want to put out the question there. But, and this is why I think it's incorrect, this will bring us back to the Chelik Aleph, the first few prakim, is that the man's Re'iyah Kitov is extremely important in Bereshis. That's the story of the Eitzadas Toivara. So that gets us to a Re'iyah Kitov, a Teira Ishi Kitov Eitzamachol, but also a Re'iyah Kira. So let me just lay out what I want to do next time. And this we'll do next time. Figure out Vayara Lekim Kitov from a human, Vayara Kitov from a human perspective, which brings us to Toiv and Ra. That's what we see in Chelik Aleph Perek Beis and Bereshis Perek Beis and Gimel. We have to understand, why does it bring us to Toiv and Ra? Okay? Why does it bring us to Toiv and Ra? Doesn't the Rambam tell us in Chelik Gimel Perek Yud that there's no such thing as Ra? So why can't Chava know that? Why can't Adam know that? Okay, so the Rambam over here is being Soiser Das Toiv and Ra. Okay? Why is that problematic from a human perspective to know that there's Toiv and not Ra? And how does that connect to Hashem's Re'iyah Kitov, which is the Chayra not from a human perspective, but is from a human perspective, because Torah is using the human Re'iyah. Okay, that's just brought out. Just want to bring out those broad strokes. On the one hand, we have Vayara Lekim Kitov in its true meaning, which X, I don't know what that is. We have its borrowed meaning from humans, but we have something very important, that the borrowed meaning from humans, as we see in Bereshis Perek Beis and Gimel, is always not going to be a Re'iyah as Kol Hashas Avnei Tov Moed. Humans are always going to see Ra also. So we have to ask, why do humans see Ra, unlike Chelik Gimel Perek Yud? In other words, it seems like the human kind of Re'iyah is not able to be fathomed this business of Ra being a header. And that's why I think Shmuel's question got to that point, because Shmuel asked like this. Shmuel's question in the chat was, the whole idea is that you can't judge Mitzias as being Ra. If you're making that judgment, but what if you're not thinking? What if you're making that judgment without wanting to make the judgment? Yeah? This is a very important question. If there's such a thing as making a judgment without wanting to make a judgment, which is serious about that in the Rambam, then a person could be Raya Ra. Could be Raya Ra. Because even though Ra is Heder, he's not committed to Metzias. Maybe he's not committed to Metzias. Maybe he's being Motzei al Korchai, and everything he's even his engagement with Metzias is al Korchai. So that's an important question to think about. Okay, we'll have to leave those things for next time. I don't know if we'll get to the next parak next time, even though I said we would.